Good morning and welcome to the Core Connection. I'm Mira Rubin here with you on Enlightened World Network. And today's topic is discovering ourselves, uncovering who we are, what our desires are, what lights us up, that we may better find fulfillment and satisfaction and joy and um, make our greatest contribution to the world. So should be a fun conversation. Before we get started, let's take a minute or two to get present. Let's take a deep breath in through your nose and hold it. And imagine clean, crisp oxygen flooding your lungs, flowing into your bloodstream, nourishing all your cells, all your organs, bringing vital life energy to your body and being. And as you exhale, exhale any tension, stress, negativity, fatigue. And now let's take another deep breath in through your nose and hold it. And imagine brilliant, bright light lighting you up from the inside out, illuminating, electrifying, and energizing all your cells, your molecules, your electrons, creating a brilliant beam of light and energy from your heart out into the world. And as you exhale, exhale any remaining tension, stress, negativity, fatigue. And now let's press our palms together, vigorously rub your hands together to feel the friction, the temperature, the pressure, the motion, the tickling and tingling as you stop, and allow all those sensations to bring you present right here, right now, into this remarkable physical form that enables us to experience life. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Good morning, Rosalind. Welcome. So good to have you here this morning, and welcome to everybody else who's joining us. Today, we're talking about discovering ourselves. And it's funny, for the first time, I think ever, when I was writing the word discovery, I heard discover. So to uncover, to remove the covering from ourselves, that we may better be in alignment with our essence. It's funny, I'm loving this insight about discover, because it's so much the foundation of the core connection work that I do with folks, where our essence, I guess the premise is that our essence is sort of laid over with all these ideas, beliefs, patterns, behaviors that we can call them spells, even, where we're under the thrall or in the thrall of all the conditioning that we've received in our families, in our culture, through our experiences. And so to be discovering, undoing the covering, brings us back to closer and closer to our essential self. And what does that, why even bother? Like, what's that about? So I believe, and again, holding beliefs with open hands, but at the moment, my belief hypothesis around this is that we all come here for a reason, and that we each have a spark that's unique to us, that allows us um, a particular path of highest fulfillment, and this is, we call it purpose, we call it reason for being. So as we live our lives, we're often so engaged with addressing the necessities, with responding to the urgent demands of our lives, that I don't think we spend very much time typically looking at, what do I desire? What lights me up? What do I prefer? And when we live in the realm of preference and choice and discovery, we have the opportunity, we presence ourselves to the opportunity for choice. So what am I choosing? And the key to any of this is presence. The key to life itself, I think, is presence. But when we are present to any given moment, we can be asking ourselves, what do I prefer? What am I choosing in this moment? And when we have moments, I mean, we can look at this on so many different dimensions. We can look at it from moment to moment. What am I creating in this moment? What am I preferring in this moment? But we can also be looking at overall, what makes me tick? We often approach this self-discovery through a lens of what's wrong with me, instead of the lens of what's possible, or what do I desire, what inspires me, what energizes me. And we don't typically embark consciously on that discovery. And my thinking is that there's such a much greater richness of life available to us when we recognize those things, not as fixed characteristics, but as at least a snapshot in this moment in time that allows us to have insight that can help us align more fully with that intrinsic self, with that essential self, to make choices that embolden, enliven, enrich us. So some exercises that we can do is really just to give ourselves time to exercise our desire component, shall we call it. That's not a really great representation, but to be feeling into what's our heart's desire. And it's often unapproachable, surprisingly, because we don't know how to get there. So one of the ways that we can start discovering what we enjoy is to look at the things that we gravitate to, or the patterns of our lives, the patterns that we can recognize through our lives in terms of interests. We often look at the patterns of our lives in terms of challenges, right? It's like, oh my gosh, the same issue, it's still here, whatever. But we don't often take the time to really presence ourselves to the themes of our lives that are enlivening, that are moving in the direction of fulfillment, and moving us into our joy. And even when we discover those things, we don't necessarily give them their due in terms of our time and energy, commitments of our time and energy. So I think part of the reason that this is coming up is that the way that I run my practice, I do 3 months on with clients and then 1 month off, and 3 months on, 1 month off. And sometimes I actually take that month off, and sometimes I create projects for myself. And so this month is I'm giving myself the gift this month of getting back to some things that I just really enjoy. And I have always enjoyed art and craft, and not like well, so fiber arts, for example, is something that I really enjoy. And so so far this month, I've given myself the opportunity. I'm going to get back to doing some weaving, and I haven't done that in years and years. And I've been learning some new techniques. I had no idea that there was a thing called Tunisian crochet, which is sort of, in my opinion, a sort of cross between knitting and crochet. And I knit and I crochet and I weave and I do felting and all kinds of other fiber things. It's just fun. I enjoy it. And it's soothing in a lot of ways too, because there's repetition and variety both. Anyway, so in allowing myself to do these things, to enjoy doing these things, to give myself the time, and also reading, just to be looking at the things that nourish and nurture me, has been such a gift. And I realize that it's something that we often don't do, or that we don't often do, that we don't give ourselves the space to be finding those things and dedicating time to those things that feel nurturing, that feel in alignment, that serve us in our essential being. And so I invite you to look at what are the things and that light you up, that you enjoy, that you're curious about, that you have through your life, that you may have had sort of a recurring, if not consistent, call toward, or in curiosity about, interest in. And I invite you to make time to pursue those things, because they're nurturing, because they're feeding you at a different level of being. And we tend to have pretty demanding lives. We tend to have so much to do, and typically we prioritize these things to do without recognizing the necessity for self-care. And self-care doesn't necessarily mean massage or a bath or things that are nurturing in that way. It can also, and does also, mean self-care in terms of things that just allow you to relax, to be present to yourself, to be engaged, to do something that doesn't even necessarily have any apparent outward impact. Why? Because the inner nurturance is an essential part of what enables us to be able to put ourselves out in the world. And so many of us experience burnout, And the question is, well, why? Why do we experience that? Probably because we're pushing and pushing and pushing and doing output constantly without getting input, without receiving, without allowing ourselves that nurturance that we need to recharge and replenish and renew, because we're so busy driving, driving, driving. And oftentimes the things that we're driving toward aren't even our own things. They're not even our own priorities. We just do them because it's expected. I'm reminded of a client who had a radio show and who was building a whole promotion campaign for their coaching business, and they were not feeling joyful. They were feeling overwhelmed. And in our work together, what came out of it was that they didn't really want to be doing any of that stuff, that they were at a point in their lives of an age and of a circumstance, a material circumstance, where they didn't need to do this drive, drive, drive kind of thing, that they could actually kick back, relax, and enjoy life. And I think that we just have, because we're culturally conditioned the way we are, we have this aversion to the value of simply enjoying life. Like we want to make an impact. We have to get this done. We want to make $1 million. We want to, whatever it is, we're driving, driving, driving. But the question is, what's the quality of life? And when we discover ourselves, when we let go of all these overlays, as we uncover ourselves, we become aware that that life can be quite simple. Life can be like the pleasures of life can be quite simple, like reading a book in the sunshine, or learning to knit or crochet or whatever, for me at the moment, like whatever, that we don't, all this driving, where is it going? Ultimately, where is it going? They say that people don't remember the things you've done. What they remember is how they felt, how you made them feel, or how they felt when they were with you. And I think we get to look at how we feel when we're with ourselves. Are we present? Are we in a space of engagement with life? Are we experiencing a peacefulness? Because I believe, again, with open hand, but we can try this on, I believe that if I'm peaceful, then I'm propagating peace. And if I'm anxious, I'm propagating anxiety. If I'm angry, I'm propagating anger. If I'm loving, I'm propagating love. And I think we get to look at what kind of world do we want to create for ourselves, let alone for others. And we've been taught to value all the external manifestations as success. Money, fame, accomplishment, the doingness. And we've been taught to value that above all else. But what about the quality of life? If we allow ourselves to create quality of life, not just for ourselves, but to propagate that out in the world, What does that look like? What does that feel like? If we can then do the doing that we do because we're inspired to do it rather than that we're driven to do it. There's a big difference between drive, which is sort of push, force, opposition, versus invitation or call. To be called into doing something is very different than being driven to do something. And the essential energy of those two different manifestations propagates. And I just am realizing more and more that these conversations around energy and distinctions around energy and the energy of love versus the energy of anxiety, for example, that it's not metaphorical. This is as real as anything is, that we are energetic beings. And even our bodies are energetic. Everything in the universe is energy. And therefore, if we are more conscious of our own energy and being present to that, it impacts the broader environment. And most importantly, it impacts our experience of ourselves and of our lives. And so taking the time to look at, well, what are these beliefs that I have? And actually then looking at them to say, are they serving me? Because we create these constructs, we create these structures, consciously or otherwise, just as human beings, we create these structures of interpretation that create our experience of the world. And so when we look at ourselves, when we're willing to discover ourselves, we can start to recognize, oh my gosh, here's this pattern that's happening in my life over and over. What would I have to believe for that pattern to be recurring? And that can give us some insight into a belief that is generating an experience. And then we can say, well, what would I prefer to believe? What would I prefer to create? And we can hold our beliefs again with open hand, not as absolute truths, but as a framework, as a structure, as a hypothetical approach to something that we can try it on and see, does this work better? Does this work better? How is it impacting the quality of my life? What do I enjoy? What do I prefer? And we're conditioned culturally to believe that those kinds of questions are questions of selfishness, and that selfishness is somehow wrong. I would venture to say that pretty much everything we do operates from some level of selfishness, because it's all coming from the self. You know, when we talk about selfless acts, we talk about self-sacrifice. There's something in it for us to be self-sacrificing as well. Like, what is it that we're gaining? It's all driven by the way that we interpret it. So maybe we believe that self-sacrifice is a path to righteousness or to salvation. And so we want to be saved. So we do whatever we do that's self-sacrificing. The thing is that when we pay attention to our preferences, to our desires, to our deepest self-expression, my experience so far is that's when we make the greatest contribution to the world. So by contributing to ourselves, we contribute to the world as well, or we're in better shape to do so. So really what today's conversation is an invitation to self-discovery, not through the lens of what's wrong with me, but through the lens of what are the things that drive me? What are the things that calm me? What are the things that light me up? What's the framework that creates the lens through which I experience the world? So that's it for today. I'm Mira Rubin. This is the Core Connection, and I go live here each weekday morning at 9 a.m. Eastern on Enlightened World Network Facebook page and YouTube channel. And I invite you to please like, follow, and share Enlightened World Network and me. The links are in the description. And as always, it is a privilege and pleasure to have the opportunity to spend this time together, musing on what it is to be human. And so until next